Now, get ready to talk hockey. Streaming from the Oilers Live studio. Subscribe or follow today.
Hey, it's Michael here for another Tuesday edition of Oilers Live. Not sure what's going on, but Dash couldn't hear me. I think the rest of everybody could. At least I hope so. So I'm here with Dash. I know in the background we're waiting for Hart Levine from Puckpedia, who's having a couple computer issues and should be joining soon. Thanks for joining us. Sorry about last week. We had some technical difficulties and first Tuesday show missed in a very, very long time. Welcome, Dash. How's the week going?
Yeah, it's going okay. I'm a little bit under the weather, but you don't work for a network called Heavy Hockey and not play sick, right?
That's right. We'll put you out there anyway. You're going to play, you're going to play, and you're going to play sick.
When you're a first liner, you got to go when you got to go.
That's right. First liner. Wow.
Team needs me.
Let's talk about this first liner stuff. You know what? It's been maybe the week off was the right move. We had a chance to catch up on some Oilers camp and some of the exhibition games that went on. A few guys doing some things, and of course, some big names. We got Hart Levine is ready to join. It looks like we're going to bring him in right away. Let's bring in Hart. How you doing, Hart? Can you hear us? Maybe you can't hear us. You'll get that figured out. But he's wearing the Jays hat. We can hear you, Hart, or I don't know if we can hear you yet.
I can hear you now. Sorry.
No problem.
For my stuff to break. Sorry about that.
Oh no, all good. Good. And the show.
Are you guys on?
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, we're on. We're
okay.
Already a couple minutes in. Start at 9. Now we're on. Now that we're on EdmontonSportsTalk.com, we start right at 9 p.m. Oilers Live Tuesday every week.
Sorry about that.
Hey, no problem. We got you in. It's all good. I was just saying it's good to see you wearing the Blue Jays cap, supporting the team. Sort of a sad outing tonight.
Yeah, I was gonna throw it after the game. But I'll wait till tomorrow to decide that.
Yeah. Well, we lost. Everybody's having technical issues today. It looks like we lost Dash too. It's all good. All good. We missed our first Tuesday show in a long time last week. I was I'd love to say I was in the middle of nowhere, but I was in Aurelia, Ontario, and just couldn't get good enough network coverage to get the show going. So everybody was comforted by some replay of the Nielsen show, I think, from the morning.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I mean, they probably enjoyed that more than they enjoyed our stuff anyway. So it's all good. So tell me, how are things going, Hart? How's Puckpedia doing? How's life in general? Can you not hear me?
Oh, it's going well, thank you. It's starting to get into a busy time of the year. A little bit of a lull here in the end of the summer, but now it's gearing up, trying to get all the rosters projected. Start looking at what teams are going to do for LTIR, which is kind of my the bane of my existence. Sometimes is just managing all the LTIR stuff. We're also working on some exciting new things on the site and pushing and hoping to get them launched before the season starts. So yeah, there's a lot going on.
Oh, that's kind of exciting. So you got some new stuff happening. Anything that you can announce yet, or is that still a bit of a surprise and waiting? I feel like we've got some delay.
Yeah. I can just share that the site look and feel. It's crazy. It's actually 5 years since the site launched, so I think it's just time to freshen up the look and feel, add a few little features. We kind of set the stage to get this release, and then we can start doing more when we're on a little bit of a new format. So that's coming. The exciting news that was recently announced was the partnership with Puckdoku. I'm not sure if you guys play Puckdoku, but that's now kind of part of the Puckpedia family. Puckdoku is kind of the game that's going throughout the hockey world. It's like Sudoku, but for hockey. There's teams or categories on the edges of the square, and you have to come up with a player that's played for both those teams or that's played for a team and meets one of the stat categories. So it's been very popular, and got to know the founder of it, and to be part of that as well. And that's also part of what we're launching on the site, bringing that more into Puckpedia. Have an official Puckdoku blog, because there's a lot of content out there. People writing about the answers that they're using, like the most common guys that they're using. So excited to release all that pretty soon.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, no, I wasn't familiar with Puckdoku. I think I've seen something about it in the past, but I'm sure Dash, you're probably into that.
I haven't played it. It's been on my to-do list, if you will, but I have heard a few people chirp some players, like Strudwick on media, because that's a good name to use in Puckdoku. So
right on.
Strudwick's finally good for
I've
something
used him
in
a
hockey.
couple times. Yeah, and there was one the other day. It was a player that played for the Oilers and the Devils, and I picked Valery Zelapukin. And I sent it to my friend, and he's like, "Oh my god, I picked him too." So sometimes you think you come up with the most unique answer, and it's not.
Jaromir Jagr.
I'm honestly terrible at stuff like that.
Yeah.
I can't, I just can't put it together. And then once you tell me, I'm like, oh yeah, that's the guy. So yeah.
Thanks for having me back, Michael. I thought you kicked me off and just wanted to show to yourself with heart.
Well, I'd considered it, but I would have done that a long time ago if I didn't want to.
Knew it was that easy.
If I knew it was that easy, that's right. Yeah, we were just talking with Hart about some of the changes that he can talk about with Puckpedia coming up. I guess a little bit of a revamp of Puckpedia.com. So for those of you tuning in, you can go to Puckpedia.com. It's the source for most of heavy hockey, where we go if we want information on our salary caps, or I love the agent dashboard is great. I personally, I use it a lot just to check out the depth chart, and I love the way it looks now. So I hope you don't change it too much. But I love the way that the salaries are laid out, and it's pretty easy for me to go and get information. And then, of course, we've got your little pop-up that we use on heavyhockey.com. So anytime there's a player mentioned, which is in every article, a little pop-up comes up, and that's powered by Puckpedia. It gives you their salary cap information, contract year, expiry, all of the good stuff. So
yeah, thanks, Michael. Yeah, so we have some tools for writers like yourself to integrate player contract information or team cap information into their articles really easily. So we have some of those, but that's also something we're working on over the coming few weeks, few months, is to build more of those tools, make it easier to integrate those into different publishing platforms. So we definitely want to make sure that when people are writing articles, and there's a lot of great writers out there, great sites, that it's easy for them to sort of automate making the content a little bit more interesting than just text by adding in some automatic graphics showing all the information that the reader probably is going to end up opening another tab to go see anyway. So you might as well integrate it all in there for them.
Yeah. You hear that, Dash, right? He said writers like yourself, I think is what he said. So I'm pretty sure he was talking about me and the one article that I've written for heavyhockey.com. I don't know.
Maybe he's just queuing up Lotsy later.
Yeah, does that classify as a writer? I'm not sure, but I'll take it. I will take it. In fact, Hart, I hate writing. Absolutely hate it. But happy to have the site and a bunch of guys behind us that do that. In fact, I am queuing up. We've got Ryan Lotsberg, who's one of our more prolific writers on heavyhockey.com. He'll be joining later tonight. So that's good.
Hart would have mentioned me if he was going to mention best podcast.
That's right. Of course,
yeah, I'm sure he would have.
He's got his shit straight.
Yeah.
So I've got to ask, what sort of, without giving away too much, I mean, you're usually ahead of the curve. I mean, how often are you getting the scoops before other folks, and how often are you hearing from the agent in order to change on your site?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have been very fortunate since launching this site. Like, I can't believe it's already been 5 years, but over that time, yeah, I've made a lot of really good relationships with people in hockey. So agents and people like team management, and even some players, media people. And I think, in a lot of ways, because I have a little bit of knowledge about the salary cap rules and CBA, which people that are experts in other areas of hockey, they might not necessarily have that. They reach out for help and have some questions, and then, like you mentioned, agents often want to make sure that they have all their players listed under them and their ranking as high as possible on the agent leaderboard. So through that, yeah, you start hearing information, and you sort of become part of that information, the like highway, right? Where I'm hearing stuff, and then other people ask what I'm hearing, and it kind of just goes in circles like that. So, I mean, on Twitter, I really only put out like confirmed deals or confirmed contract information. I don't really try to speculate, but I certainly, hear about a lot of stuff, and then it's interesting to see what happens, what doesn't, and it's interesting to hear, like, when I know someone's kind of trying to use me to take information and give it to someone else that they might not talk to directly and get some information back. It's fun to be part of it in some small way.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, while we have you here, I think Dash and I will probably pick your head on the Oilers salary cap situation, where you see that might go, and we'll use this time effectively. We've got you until 9:30, 8:30 your time, and we'll take this opportunity. So maybe my first question, when you look at the Oilers and the cap situation this year, right? And if I go onto puckpedia.com, it says, current cap space of 382,000 and then a roster of 21 out of 23. I think the problem that I always look at these things, you see 43 out of 50 on the contract, and you see there's all these different numbers out there, and somehow they make it work. What is the legitimate situation for the Oilers right now in terms of, if they take, is that dollar value, is that including that sort of last forward that we've been asking for a minimum contract, and how does that work? Like, if they if they say they keep Lavoie and send Lane Peterson down, what does that mean for the Oilers in terms of a salary cap situation?
Yeah, so this time of year before the season starts, I'm just basically guessing what the rosters will be. I'm not including everyone that's still like with the team in camp, because that would be way too many players. So for all the teams, I try to keep a handle on what it looks like the opening rosters are going to be when they start the season. And obviously, I follow a lot of reporters, and it gets more accurate, the last couple of days. I mean, there's people getting waived every day that I'm like, oh, I guess they're not on the NHL roster. I better update that now. But so right now it's just a projection. Once the season officially starts, which this year is on the 10th, then it's not me guessing. Then it's the actual rosters and the actual, what's actually counting towards a salary cap, is as much as I'm as close as I can get to the correct official numbers. So, but yeah, right now it's just me projecting, and what I'm showing with the Oilers is 21 healthy players. They have no injured players right now, which is a change from the previous years. And so right now in my projected roster, I have Broberg and Darnay as the 6th and 7th defenseman, and I have Peterson as the 12th forward. That gives them 21 players. They don't have room for any more players than that. That was, I think, a lot of what the delay in getting McLeod and Bouchard signed this summer. I think they had in mind originally a number that was, about 400,000 less, which would have allowed them to carry a 22nd player. I think that was really the plan, was to carry a 22nd player. Maybe if you want to get into that more later, but I know like some of the other contracts that got signed before Bouchard signed pushed his number up, and then that dream was kind of dead. So now they have 21 players with 382,500 of cap space, if that's how they start. And so, yeah, could Lavoie be on that roster instead of Peterson? Yeah. Basically, anyone could be that 12th forward. Anyone that the Oilers currently have could be that 12th forward. So Lavoie has a 874,000 cap hit. So it's 100,000 more than Lane Peterson. So that means if that he was on the roster instead of Peterson, and they'd have a 782,000. So 282,000 of cap space instead of 382,000, right? So either way, they're only going to have room for that 21st player. I'd be shocked if they didn't go with 7 defensemen. So it's really that 12th forward that they're looking at. I mean, knock on wood, they've avoided injury all training camp. If they had some injuries, I mean, that would really make things tricky for them. Given how tight they are, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at some point this season they have to do what they did last year, which is not even have enough cap space to call up enough healthy skaters and have to play short for a game before then they can tap into the emergency recall rule. So it's going to be tight for them. The big difference though between this year and last year is this year they're going to be an under the cap team, which means they accrue cap space during the season. Whereas the last several years with Klefbom injured, they were an LTIR team. So what that really means is when you're an LTIR team, however much cap space you have, that's how much space you have. It doesn't grow each day. But when you're under the cap space accrues every day of the season. So, for example, 382,500, if that was the roster that started the season, if they didn't make any roster moves until the trade deadline, that would actually grow. And by the trade deadline, they could add almost 1.8 million of annual cap it to the team, to the roster. So it really grows and adds. So I don't think you'll ever see them with like a whole bunch of extra healthy guys that are healthy scratches. I mean, first of all, they don't have the cap space, but even if they could, they'd rather go leaner and build up some cap space and be able to do more at the deadline. So unlike past years where really however much cap space Holland had, at Christmas, it wasn't going to change by the trade deadline. This year, the Oilers could really, maybe they might even have deals ready to go and they might have to wait like a few more days just to build up a little bit of extra cap space.
Oh, interesting. So we've got a question from I was talking about Lotzi, who's he's joining us in a little bit, and he's pretty good with the stats usually for writing for HeavyHockey.com. He says, "Hard, I'm aware that the daily tracker is a count of salary cap hits spent per day. Does the value displayed in the cap breakdown need to be under the league cap every day of the season?"
So that's a good question, a very specific technical question, but it's a good one. So basically the answer would be no. So what Ryan is getting at here is, so basically the season is made up of a certain number of days. This season's actually longer. It's going to be 192 days. Normally it's 185, 186 days. And so the way the salary cap actually works is like every day there's a snapshot at 5 p.m. Eastern who's on the NHL roster, both injured and healthy. And for every player that's on the roster, you take their cap hit divided by the number of days. So in this case, 192, and that's that day's daily cap hit. And you add all that up at the end for 192 days, and that's the final cap hit number. But the way that it works to kind of get to make sure a team is cap compliant is you take all the days that have happened so far to that point, and then you take that roster at the most recent day, and you project that is going to be the roster for the end of this till the rest of the season for the remaining number of days. And so because of that formula and with your prorating, so Ryan's question, no, a team could actually, if they accrue enough cap space early in the season, they could then have days where the annual cap hit of that roster is over the salary cap for subsequent days. So for example, if a team was like, let's say they were $1 million under the cap on an annual basis for the first 50% of days of the season, then they could technically be 1 million over the cap every day for the second half of the season, and they'd end up right at the cap. So that's basically all goes into where I was just giving that math on how cap space accrues. So for every day you're under the cap and you're building up cap space, now you're prorating the annual cap hit for the remaining number of days, and that will allow you to be over the cap for those days. So hopefully, Ryan, you can weigh in and make sure I answered your question, but I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, I wasn't fully aware of that. I didn't understand that completely. Dash, I've got a couple more questions, but maybe I'll pass it over to you. I'm sure you've got a couple yourself.
For me, I was actually wanting to pick your brain on something that I couldn't really fully understand last year. It's centered around the LTIR for the Oilers. Okay. When we had, Smith, etc., Klefbom, I heard it mentioned several times that it handcuffed Holland in a way that he had to wait until the offseason to really make his moves, as opposed to be able to doing something at the trade deadline like he may have traditionally wanted to. What was the difference in why he could make his moves more easily off season versus in season because of that LTIR handcuff?
Okay. So I think I touched on this a little bit, just the difference between being an LTIR team and an under the cap team. So when you're an LTIR team, cap space does not accrue. So when the Oilers were an LTIR last year, let's say when Kane was added to LTIR, right, and they had like some extra space, but that space doesn't build up. So as soon as Kane is back, like that space is gone. And every day they didn't use the space, it's like ice that melts. It's gone. You can't take it to a future day. Whereas like this season, as an under the cap team, they are every day that they don't use this 382,000 of cap space, it'll build up and they can accrue and they can use more. So when Holland's saying last year he was having didn't have much flexibility, that's because as an LTIR team, like cap space wasn't building up and it was dollar in, dollar out. The other point to that is the way that you sort of set your LTIR pool. Like a lot of people think that LTIR means that injured player comes off your cap and you get to it's all free cap space. And it doesn't work that way. It's all about basically the moment you officially enter LTIR, you have to capture it. And there's two ways to do it, but the way the Oilers had to do it the last couple of years is basically however much they were over the cap when they started the season, with the players on LTIR, that was their pool. So the Oilers last year, they maneuvered the roster in a way which teams do to get as close as possible to utilize as much of that LTIR as possible. So basically, they could be over the cap by as much as Smith plus Klefbom, right? And they got the roster within a few $1,000s of that. But that then sets their LTIR pool, which means now they have zero cap space. So however much they were over the cap when they submitted that opening roster, that is now their cap limit for as long as those players are still on LTIR, and they officially have zero cap space. And so for most of the season, the Oilers had literally $0 of cap space. Not like zero would grow, but even if it was $1, that could maybe grow, right? But in LTIR, it doesn't grow. It's stuck at that amount. So that was part of the handcuff. The other handcuff, which is actually sort of the opposite of maybe what you're mentioning from Holland, is teams can only be teams can go over the cap in the summer by 10% over the cap, right? I'm sure you've heard that, but LTIR isn't factored into that. So you can either use LTIR in the summer, which really limits how much you can optimize that calculation, or you can be 10% over the cap. So last year for the Oilers in the summer, they could be 10% over the cap. So that was 10% of 82.5 million. Or they could be over by as much as Klefbom and Smith, which was almost the same amount, which is like 8 million, right? So he didn't have as much summer flexibility as other teams. I'm not confirming this. It's just my guess. There was rumors last summer about them trying to trade for Connor Brown out of Ottawa. And I really think that the reason they couldn't do it is they just didn't have the off-season cap space to do it. And in fact, Washington traded for him. And to do that, they did have to put Nick Backstrom on a summer LTIR, which really limited how much LTIR they captured. It actually cost them about $2.5 or $3 million of cap space, from what I remember, because they had to commit to that LTIR number in the summer instead of on the opening day of the season where they could really optimize it. So that is the harm, or one of the challenges when you're in LTIR. You lose summer flexibility, and you also don't gain as much flexibility in season.
That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's not so apparent right away when you're when you're just looking at it and trying to understand where all this money is coming from and why certain teams look like they're over the cap and other teams don't. Now, I'm just sitting here, I'm listening to you, and I'm wondering, 5 years ago, were you a cap geek then? And did you just how many other cap geeks are there out there? I mean, what happened here that made you decide that being a guy that understands cap, like the salary cap in the NHL, was the way to
Hart
go?
was a cap geek in the womb.
Yeah, you're kind of born that way.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I was really into the cap calculations and numbers and everything way before I started the website. That's why I started the website. Originally my schooling is I'm an accountant, or background as an accountant. So obviously I like numbers. But when the cap came in out of the lockout in 05, 06, the first salary cap site that I remember was called NHLnumbers.com. And I remember being on there, and I remember my coworkers like at the accounting firm asking me, could the Oilers trade for Sergei Samsonov, right? How's that going to work? So I was just always into the numbers. I'm a huge hockey fan, and I like watching on the ice, but I also really like figuring out what teams could do. And I think like most fans, like you always think, or you think you might be smarter than the GM, or you at least want to like think about different scenarios. And really, since the salary cap came in, it's not about like which player is better. It's about like, how can you make it all fit in the cap, right? It's all about getting players to fit and how good are players relative to their cap hit. So to me, it's just what kind of being into hockey means is like knowing and understanding the salary cap. And I got to a point where I really had such a passion for it, and I wanted to do something a little bit in the hockey world. And there's definitely been some great cap sites out there, but I found, now this is 6-7 years ago as a fan, they were a little intimidating for more of a casual fan. Like my friends were asking me for questions, and I'd refer them to these sites, and they'd say, "Oh, that's too complicated for me," right? So I wanted something that was a little bit more accessible to all fans, while still being obviously accurate and being a good resource for more hardcore people. But I also wanted to bring in more information. Like, so again, when I was working and wasting time, I'd have a salary cap site open in one tab. I'd have Hockey DB open in another tab to see the stats. And like, I like to see all the trade histories, who got traded for who, and all that happened. I'd have another site open like for, analytics in those days, like Corsi and stuff, right? I'd have to go to like TSN for injury news. And I thought, like, this is crazy, right? This is too many different places. It should just all be in one place. So that was also part of the vision for the site, is just have all that in one place. So most fans, they can just go to one site and see most of what they're looking for. I mean, so that's why we literally all those things I mentioned, that's why it's all on the site. Because the business plan for the site was I'll build a site that I want to use, and then hopefully other people will want to use it too. So basically everything on the site, it's because I'm interested in it, and I want to know that information, and I don't want to have to go anywhere else to see it. So
yeah, well, we're interested too. So we've got a question from one of our longtime viewers and listeners, some stranger. That's his username. He asks, so how does the Connor Brown contract work? In Lotsberg, Lotzi added to that. He said, how is the Brown performance bonus going to work for next year if he meets the 10-game played clause?
Yeah, so there's only certain players that are eligible for performance bonuses. So there's 3 types of players. The most common that we all see are players on entry-level deals, right? So when you sign your first contract, you can have a deal with performance bonuses. It can be either for playing number of games, or it could be for what are called like A categories, and that's certain number of goals, assists, points, block shots, all that kind of stuff. The other category are players that are over 35 on a 1-year deal, and you've seen some of those contracts before. And the third category, which doesn't get talked about as much, is it's basically for veteran players that have been injured and are basically trying to make a bit of a comeback. So it's technically players that have played 400 games, and they're going to sign a 1-year deal. And in the last season, they spent at least 100 days of the season on injured reserve. So last year was 185 games or days. And so did someone spend, just over half of that on injured reserve? And so Connor Brown, since he got injured, the first few games of the season, qualifies for that. Max Pacioretty qualifies for that as well, who signed in Washington. And so because these are a lot of top performance bonuses, it's just like any like a 35 plus performance bonus. It can really be for any category whatsoever. The most common is games played, but it could be for goals, it could be for wins, it could be for cup performance. So Mike Smith often had those in his last couple contracts because he was over 35, and his were usually for how many games he started, and how far they went in the playoffs, and if he it was like every round he would get a bonus if he started half the games in that round, different things like that. So that's how it works. But specifically for Connor Brown, his is it's really just designed to get him his bonus. It's he gets the entire bonus when he plays 10 games, 3.225 million. So once he plays 10 games, he gets 3.225 million. And the way that bonuses work for the salary cap is performance bonuses, they actually aren't considered until the end of the season. So his bonus, or if Broberg hit a bonus, none of that matters during the season. So it doesn't affect the current year cap situation, which is part of the reason why they're attractive. But what happens then at the very end of the season, you take the team's final cap hit number. So like I talked about earlier, every day you've added up the cap hit, you take that total number, then you add in all the performance bonuses that were earned. And then when you compare that to the salary cap number, in this case, $83.5 million, any amount over that is going to be the performance bonus overage for the next season. So like the last couple of years when the Oilers were in LTIR, that means that they were over the salary cap. Just by definition of LTIR, they were over the salary cap. And so therefore, all the performance bonuses that were earned actually became an overage automatically, right? Because they would, like last year, they were, $88 million final cap hit. Then you add in all the bonuses. Well, that's definitely over the $82.5 million cap. And actually for the Oilers, I know I'm going on a bit of a tangent, but for the Oilers, it was really interesting because Bouchard looked like he wasn't going to make most of his bonuses last year. But after they traded Tyson Barrie, he went on that real tear after the trade deadline with points. And it actually came down to game 82. He scored a goal, and that got him to both 40 points, which earned him $212,500, and it got him to 0.49 points per game, which earned him another $212,500. So that goal in game 82 got him $425,000 of bonuses, which became a cap charge for the Oilers this year. So it really can add up, right? So if you look at the Oilers page now, I mean, you'll see their cap situation, and at the bottom it shows the carryover bonus overage, which is $850,000, which was all Bouchard, everything that he earned. Which so the Oilers, back to the original comment, Michael, they could add a 22nd player if Bouchard had not scored in game 82 last year. So it all ties together.
Bouchard again. Bouchard again.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. And in fact, the cap summary projection, which is what Hart's talking about there, is really quite eye-opening. And that's what we'll have, what we'll see in the 2024-2025, assuming Connor Brown makes his 10 games, which he should.
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, I would feel bad for him if he doesn't get to 10 games again. But I mean, that's the thing for the Oilers now. They really, they're using a tool to their advantage. But if the cap goes up from 83.5 to 87.5 million next year, 88 million, I mean, that's pretty much all gone now with Connor Brown's bonus overage that he's going to have, right?
Yeah.
And then, I don't think I would be pleasantly surprised if Broberg gets his bonus, but maybe Dylan Holloway hits some of his bonuses, right? So you could be looking at, 3.5 million in bonus overages. I mean, so one thing for the Oilers, as we, just to kind of finish that other conversation too about LTIR versus being under the cap. So this season, though, because they're an under the cap team, they're not going to necessarily be right at the 83.5 when the season ends. So let's say they finish at, $1 million under the cap, and Brown earns his bonus, well, then only 2.225 is going to be the overage for next season, right? So however much cap space they finish the year with, that will come out of what their overage will be for next season. So again, I think they're so tight, they're not going to really have a chance to kind of save cap space. But if you ever got to a point where they did have some extra guys, like you could see them sending guys down and just trying to build up cap space at the end of the year, just to have less of a cap charge for the overage for next season.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, even if Connor Brown gets to 7 or 8 games healthy, they're going to put him together with popsicle sticks and crazy glue and duct tape for games 8, 9, and 10.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but it's interesting to see that he gets it all for 10 games, right? Like there's a lot of these bonuses, he gets so much at 10 and 20 and 30 and 40, but they're really just like, all right, we're going to give you $4 million and this is how we're going to break it down so we can afford you, right?
Yeah. No, that's great. That's good information. I've got one question, and then Dash, if you got one last one for Hart before we go. But one thing I'm kind of curious about, and this is maybe you don't have to take too long on it, but as I look at all of these stats and everything, and I look at, say, the cap summary projection for the Oilers, where we're going out 4 years in these projections, whereas in 2026, 2027, you look at 25 million, which I assume just means that after all the contracts are then and gone, that's what's left in 2026. Have you started to do, now that you've done this, and I don't know how long you've been looking at the numbers, but have you started to look at what, just from a numbers game? I mean, there's all sorts of folks out there looking at the analytics from a player perspective. But have you started to use any of these numbers for analytics from a team perspective? When we put our team together 4 years from now, we want to be at 25% cap projection because we know that's what we're going to need from, a typical aging roster. But, it just as an example. But have you done any of that, or people come to you and said, "Hey, I want to use your information to do stuff like this"? Any teams that are doing this today?
Yeah, there's definitely teams doing this, and there's teams doing it with like my contract data that I supply with them. So I know that this is very common with team analytics people. I know, just one thing I've noticed as you talk about building rosters a little bit further out, the approach differs for some teams. Like, we know that the cap is going to jump significantly now over the next few years, right? I think, you look out at the Oilers in 26, 27, they only have 4 contracts. But if you look at next year, they have 15 contracts, and it's like their most important guys. And even the following season, they have 9 contracts, and it's a lot of important guys. If you compare that to a team like the Leafs before Austin Matthews signed, they basically had nobody signed after this season, right? So they signed Matthews, but they still have to sign Nylander, and Marner's up the year after. I think their only long-term guy was really Riley, and they had Yarncroc for a couple of years, right? So I think that when the cap is going up significantly, if you have good players signed to contracts, it's a pretty big advantage to have your players, basically having players signed to numbers like in a low $80 million cap environment when the cap is now like 90 million plus, right? Where a team like the Leafs, it's a trade-off. They certainly created lots of flexibility for themselves, right? Like the Oilers, for the last couple of years, have basically been locked into this roster, right? Because they signed these long-term deals. They haven't had a lot of flexibility. So the Leafs certainly have flexibility. Like, they could blow things up after the season, and they could go after anybody because they don't have much cap commitments. But the flip side of that is now they're signing guys, in an $88 million cap environment, or salary cap environment, in a $90+ million cap environment. So it's expensive. It's basically like, do you want to get a mortgage now with high interest rates, or did you get your mortgage a year ago when the rates are much lower, right? And so the Oilers, I do think, have an advantage for the next 2 seasons. Well, 2 seasons, I would say. I mean, one with Draisaitl, right? But that they're paying, prices from a lower cap, and other teams are. I think people will be shocked at some of the contracts handed out like next summer and the year after, when all of a sudden teams, it's like they have monopoly money to spend, which they haven't been able to spend for many years.
Yeah. Dash?
I wasn't going to ask this, but now that you just said that, what is the max percentage of the cap that you can pay to one player? Like, what should we expect Connor McDavid to make next year?
The max is in 3 years. The max is 20%. I don't think Connor will take 20%. I mean, the story goes from when he signed his current contract, he was going to sign for 13.25, and he went back to the team and said, "I think that's too much. I'm going to reduce it to 12.5." Right. So, I mean, by the time Connor is due for a new contract, so he's got, 3 years left. So in 26, 27, the cap could be close to $100 million. Is he going to take a $20 million cap hit? Is he worth it? Of course, but will he? It doesn't seem like his style. Doesn't seem like hockey player style. We saw a couple players take max cap hits at the very beginning of the salary cap. I think Jagger's contract, just because it was grandfathered in, when Brad Richards signed, I think it was like a $7.8 million cap hit. That was 20%. I
think there's only been 2 or 3 in the history of the league, hasn't there?
Yeah, I mean, if Austin Matthews didn't just sign for it when he could have, probably. I mean, I just don't think it's going to happen now. But that is the maximum 20. It's 20% of the current cap situation. So, for example, Austin Matthews, like what he signed for, the max he could sign for now is 20% of $83.5 million. If he waited until July 1st next season, he could have signed for 20% of like 88 or 88.5 million or whatever it's going to be. So,
right.
if this was the NBA, I think superstars would wait and sign their contract to take the max contract. But just the NHL with having to have so many players on a team and it being more of a team sport with how many players are needed to contribute. I mean, I just don't think we'll see that.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe one last question, if you got time. You got time, Hart?
Yeah, no problem.
Perfect.
Yeah, no problem.
So, I look at all of this, and then I see, salaries continue to go up, and like we look at Draisaitl, we look at Connor, and they're going. We talked about the potential for him, I guess at then 26, 27 to reach that $20 million mark. Is there a what's the inflation rate on these top players right now? Have you done the numbers on that? I'm like curious what year over year the top players are making on average, right? Like maybe the third of the league. As we get to free agency day. How does that look year
Probably
over year?
pretty linear with what the cap is going up with.
That's exactly right, Dash. I was going to say we went from, I think it's been 4 years since we first got to 82.5 million. So it's gone up, or 81.5 million. So it's gone up 2 million in basically 4 years. And so, yeah, they've really been flat for the most part, especially since like that COVID year, teams just had no cap space because they weren't anticipating it. And I really think that teams expected this season to go up by more than $1 million. So teams had less cap space than they expected. So we really haven't seen much. Like when you're looking at player comparables and trying to predict for free agent players, I mean, in the past, you'd have to put a factor in like, he's comparable to this player, but now the cap is 5% more than it was when he signed. Well, you haven't had to do that the last several years. So we haven't seen that. I would say this summer, though, was the first time you started to see a little bit of that increase. Players signing longer term deals, especially players signing extensions that don't start till next season. You're starting to see, like, if you compare the players, they are getting paid more than that same type of player would have been paid like last year. So we're starting to see it, but it's been pretty slow. And it's not so much like what players are worth. It's just a function of team cap space. And there just has been such a lack of cap space because you look at, there's a lot of teams close to the cap, but we had 15 teams that had bonus overages from last season that are like, so you think that the salary cap is 83.5 million this year, but for 15 teams, they didn't really start at 83.5. They started at less because they had bonus overages that eat into it. I think we had 19 teams that used LTIR at some point last year. So 19 teams were actually over 82.5 million cap last year, right? So there's just like no space, and using LTIR, it basically takes away cap space from next year often, and like we talked about, it's limited. It's not like just free cap space. So yeah, it's been tight. To my earlier comment, I do think when it jumps the next 2 summers, we'll see some crazy contracts, which means I think that the cap space will get chewed up pretty quickly because the money will be burning a hole in the GM's pockets. I mean, the comparable that I can think of is the NBA a number of years ago. They had a new TV deal and the cap jumped like crazy, and all these like basically bench players were sign these contracts that one summer that were more than what's like star players were getting, and by the next summer there was literally no cap space in the whole league, and the market was like frozen. And I don't think that NHL GMs are immune from that type of situation.
Yeah. No, that's great. Well, not great.
Well, it depends which team.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's more and more, especially over the last couple of years and going forward. There's more and more of an advantage of teams that two teams that manage their cap situation the best. Like, look at Carolina. How many players do they basically get for free because they have cap space? They're not afraid to let players walk if they're going to make too much for what they think they're worth, and they get Burns, and they got Pacioretty. They get basically free players. They signed players like every summer to reasonable deals because they wait or they don't go for the top of the market, right? So there's a real advantage of teams like that. I mean, look at the Oilers contract situation now. There's not really any bad contracts on the team, right? Like, is Fogle a little overpaid? Maybe. but there's really no. There, you look through it, and CC, depending, if he's a first line defenseman, it's a great contract. If he's a third pairing defenseman, it's a terrible contract. But you look back to the last couple of years, like that hasn't been the case, right? Like they had to ditch Puljujärvi, that did basically lose Kostin to get rid of Yamamoto. A couple of years ago, they were healthy scratching or sending to the minors like Neil and Chason at these big contracts, right? So, they suffered for that. Now, I think after a few years and washing some of that away, this is in my time watching the team, it's probably the most efficient cap sheet they've had, and let's see if they can keep it that way. I mean, like I'd say a team like New Jersey has a very efficient cap situation, and to me, Florida. That's no surprise that all of a sudden they got really good because they made a lot of good, smart moves. They had room to sign a guy like Dougie Hamilton, maybe a little overpriced, but that was if you're going to overpay for a star player, and they keep making moves like they got to Foley. They can keep adding because they've been efficient with their cap situation. So I think it's a real weapon, and the teams that just eyeball it and use like a pad of paper and don't just hope that the cap's going to work out, I think they're in a real mess. I mean, I think that Ottawa, for example, they've done a really good job signing these young guys to long-term deals, and I think over the next couple of years, I think that's going to look really good. But I don't think they managed the cap situation this summer very well when they can't sign Pinto to a contract without now, you're hearing teams want like a first-round pick to take Matthew Joseph. I mean, he's not a star player, but in any other situation, you could at least give him away or you get some asset for him. But because they back themselves into a corner, they have no opportunity. I mean, this summer, Ken Holland, he had to make it work, but he cleared his cap space first, and then he signed McLeod and Bouchard into that cap space and still had a little bit left over. Not as much as he wanted, but he left himself some outs, right? So I think now Ottawa is really going to pay. They're either going to have to trade Pinto or they're going to have to give up valuable assets. I mean, they just waived 2 former top prospects. People don't think Bernard Docker, he's more in the suspect territory, but still they lost Lassie Thompson. They might lose Bernard Docker. Sokolov is another player that might get claimed here tomorrow. And to me, that's just cap mismanagement. And it's not a surprise because you hear the stories under the previous ownership where there was like no front office. It was just like Dorian basically by himself with no support. So, it takes a real skill set to manage that. And I think that's a real asset.
Yeah. Dash, any last words for Hart?
A couple quick hits there. Yeah, I think the Panthers have managed their cap pretty well and Matthew Tkachuk is on a hell of a deal. CC might not be on that great of a deal for us, but the thing is that his value of his replacement has gone up in the meantime. So, you try to get somebody for that equal value, and I don't think you're going to be able to do that.
I think he's pretty tradable. I mean, if he plays like last season, maybe not so much, but the word is he was hurt. So if he's even, somewhere between last season and his first season, I think that's pretty tradable. And I mean, if they're going to upgrade this team, to me, they need a number 1 rate shot defenseman. And part of how they can make the space is moving CC out to do that, right? Because he doesn't make sense on your third pair if you can do better. But I don't think he has negative value, right? I mean, I think
right.
I know last year I think they probably tried to include him instead of Barry, when they were bringing in a big defenseman, and he probably didn't have the value. But I think, halfway through the season, if he's partway to where he was 2 years ago, I think he has some value. So yeah, I think they're in a pretty good shape to add potentially.
I agree.
Better than last year.
Yeah, appreciate the chat. Thanks.
My pleasure.
Yeah, it was really great having you on, Hart. As always, maybe just before you go, let everybody know where they can find you, whether it's Twitter. Yeah. Obviously, we know where to get you on the web at puckpedia.com. But and then anything else you want to finish with?
Go to the website, puckpedia.com, on Twitter at Puckpedia. I started a Threads account, Puckpedia, but I've kind of lost that a little bit. But maybe if there's more action on there, I'll get back on there. Watch for some updates here. The first exciting thing, well, for me anyways, towards the end of the week will be my second annual crack at trying to predict how teams will set their rosters to optimize their LTIR. So, that's kind of a puzzle trying to move the pieces around to optimize the LTIR capture. So I'll put that out a few days before the rosters get announced. And then, hopefully pretty soon you'll see a little bit of a refreshed look to the site. It makes it a little easier to get around and see things. And really excited about the partnership with Puckdoku. You'll see some integrations on that. Like if the Oilers are the team on Puckdoku that day, you'll see a little note when you go to the Oilers page, and you'll see like a little link to play today's puzzle. But if you haven't played that, I suggest you check it out, puckdoku.com. I'm sure once you start playing it, like me, first thing I do when I open my eyes, even if I'm not fully awake, I start playing that day's puzzle. So similar to Puckpedia, I wanted to get involved in Puckdoku because I thought I was like the number one fan of it and number one user. So I wanted to be a part of it as well.
Right on.
Thanks so much for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you being there. This is Oilers Live from the Heavy Hockey Network. You're listening to Heavy Hockey at Night. Proud to be a friend of Edmonton Sports Talk, and we'll be right back. Join Devin, Bruce, and the rest of the fantasy hockey hacks right here on Edmonton Sports Talk, Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Mountain, or tune in at youtube.ca/heavy hockey, and make sure you like and subscribe. Looking for a hockey fix? We've got editorials, fantasy hockey, monthly brackets, and more. Go to heavyhockey.com. Hey, it's Oilers Live Tuesdays, a regular 9 p.m. Mountain Time, now streamed live on edmontonsportstalk.com, or tune in at youtube.ca/heavy hockey. Make sure you subscribe.
Oilers Live Podcast.
Want hockey podcasts? Tough Call Podcast, 99 Forever Podcast, fantasy hockey hacks, and replays of Oilers Live. Available anywhere you get podcasts. Just search for Heavy Hockey Network or go to heavyhockey.com. That's right. We need your help. We need your subscriptions. Make sure you subscribe at www.youtube.ca/heavy hockey.
Oilers Live Podcast. Oilers Live Podcast.
Hey, we're back. That was a great first segment with Hart Levine from Puckpedia.com. A couple of housekeeping items for those of you tuning in right now. There's a live chat that occurs on our YouTube channel. You can interact with us at youtube.ca/heavy hockey. While you're there, please give us a subscribe. All of this is brought to you by the Heavy Hockey Network, which can be found at heavyhockey.com. Now, Dash and I welcome to Oilers Live Tuesday. Not for his inaugural show, because he's been on Oilers Live Tuesday lots, but this is the first time he's been on EdmontonSportsTalk.com. You got big shoes to follow there, Lotsy. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. I know it's a tough act to follow for sure.
Yeah, it's good to see you. And I guess it's had to have been at least 4 or 5 weeks. We were having you on just about every week for a while.
Yeah, I had a good little run there, but you guys have had some much more entertaining and interesting guests in the meantime, so happy to take a back seat to those guys.
Yeah, well, I'm on every week, Lotsy. Thanks, though.
Yeah, me too.
So we got we're gonna switch gears from all the salary cap talk. Although that was that was fascinating.
Right?
Hart is he's a cap guy. Obviously, he used to do. I don't know if he still does, but he used to do like a weekly mailbag on Puckpedia or something to that effect. And he certainly knows his stuff.
He clearly wasn't boring enough to be a real accountant.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're gonna be into numbers, I mean, you might as well be into hockey numbers. Right?
You could fill 2 internets with what I don't know about cap space and what Hart
Well, I
knows. Like,
learned some things today, right? Like
Yeah.
the LTIR piece was always a bit of a mystery to me. I knew it was simple, but I never took the time to get to know it. And the cap accrual is quite neat as
Yeah,
well.
I just always knew we were handcuffed. I just didn't really truly understand why, but yeah.
Yeah, like
anyways.
I dug into a lot of the LTIR stuff over the past few years and just doing articles, just trying to wrap my head around it too. And like, it took a lot of research and a lot of trial and error and failure in some articles. I made myself look dumb in a few, but yeah, it's interesting stuff for sure.
Well, good thing you're the heavy hockey oracle and made yourself look pretty friggin' brilliant in a few too, buddy.
That's right. That's right.
Blind squirrel finds a nut sometimes, right?
Hey, whatever
You
call
know,
it.
Hart's pretty accessible. So if you ever have any questions for him, he's usually pretty happy to help and go through that. I had him on the show. He said what, it's 5 years. I had him on Oilers Live pretty much right when he started. Now, a friend of the show, a fellow by the name of SPR, came across Hart. Actually, I think it was Kelly from Beer League Heroes and SPR. They said, "Hey, there's this guy Hart Levine, and he's made this new website." And they said, "You should get him on the podcast." And at the time, I think, I had maybe a couple thousand followers on Twitter, and Hart had like 400 or 500 followers. And now I'm still at a couple thousand followers, and Hart's at like 40,000 followers. So,
but you gave him the heavy hockey bump.
That's it. I mean, I wish I could give myself the heavy hockey bump, because he's Hart's done really well for himself. And you know what? When you put out a good product, then you know what you're talking about. Then that's expected. So
good things.
Good on you. Yeah. Guys, let's talk some Oilers camp. And we are a week and a day away from the season opener.
Let's get on with it.
Yeah, are you guys getting excited?
Oh yeah. Yeah, let's get on with the good stuff. Anything less than the best is a felony, said Vanilla Ice. I just want to see some games that count now.
So Oilers news today, of course, Bourgault was sent on loan to the Condors. Thoughts on Bourgault and his camp for today? Maybe Lotzi, you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. I thought Bourgault had a better camp than last year for sure. It was nice to see him snipe a couple goals against Seattle. Like, really good composure on the rush, finishing that chance. Like, he had to go backhand on that too. Like, that's really tough to corral a rebound on the backhand and have the composure to hit the empty net with that. So that was a nice little play. And then that was a rocket one-timer on that little pass from Broberg for the second one. So it's good to see some skills starting to emerge. And he makes a lot of little subtle plays along the wall in his own zone too, to try to get pucks out. And he makes subtle little plays to create space for himself in the neutral zones. Like, he does a lot of little things really well. So he's a player I'm excited to watch his development this year.
Yeah, and on that goal, that first goal that he scored, I thought what showed that he's a goal scorer is just the way that he held up and went right into the right spot. Right, like a lot of guys continue, like myself. If I'm out there, I continue to the net, right? But he put the brakes on just the right amount, so he stays in the slot, and he's there right for the perfect rebound and dumping that puck in. And it was good to see Broberg and him connect for another one. That was a beauty. I thought that.
All that was. I mean, Todd McClellan always talked about guys arriving on time. That's exactly that. Like, instead of just crashing the net hard, he arrived in the slot at the right time to put that puck in. So that was great.
Oh, good one, bringing in McClellan. Right? I love it. Arriving on time. I forgot about that. Oh man, I love that.
Dash, go back to Aikens and chop wood, carry water if we want here as well.
That's right. Let's bring them all out. We should have like, we could do a shirt with something like that. Some heavy hockey gear with every coach's favorite saying. Yeah, chop wood. I love that one too.
Or like Jay Woodcroft's favorite saying, "I love heavy hockey."
Well, we know. That goes without saying.
Yeah, I thought Bourgault played a pretty decent camp for sure. Maybe as advertised a little. What I liked was a bit surprising to me how well he went to the tough areas. I think he's a little more greasy than I thought. I would have loved to have seen him come out of the puck a little bit more often in those greasy areas. Like I didn't love his one-on-one compete. That said, it's preseason. I'm not going to put a lot into that ultimately. I like that he has a shooter's mentality. I think that, if you're going to be playing on this team, you're not a fourth line player with Borgo's skill. You're not likely going to be playing on the power play for the next 6 years. So you're probably going to have to contribute 5-on-5 on a top 6 to 9 role. And if you're going to do that, you got to shoot. I think a lot of rookie players can show error in deferring too much, like always trying to make sure that you're getting the puck to McDavid and Draisaitl, and it becomes predictable to the other team. So, we saw that with Kane a little bit and growing a little bit with Hyman, where just go and they'll find you. But yeah, he took a bird to the bake after the last game, and I think that was as expected. This last spot was never really up for grabs for him. It was between Peterson, Lavoie, and I guess Sutter or Gagne, and they're out of the picture. So, I think as advertised, and looked like a young player that had a good camp.
Yeah, 2 other players that got sent down or put on waivers, I guess, for purpose of reassignment. Of course, Seth Griffith, who's been around the league now, or been around the team for a couple of years, and James Hamblin, same thing. I don't know about you guys, but I love watching Hamblin play. Like
Me too.
You just know what you're going to get all the time, and he's the kind of guy I love that he's in the system, right? Like he's I don't think he'll ever be a regular on the team, and maybe I'm wrong, but he certainly he just kind of brings his own game, and I'm never upset with the way he plays.
I heard Stauffer say it was like 70% in the draws in the NHL last year too.
Oh, serious? Yeah. I mean, that's decent.
In the NHL,
yeah.
Oh, easy guy to root for sure. A local kid, good kid, skates hard, competes hard. What's not to like?
Yeah.
Yep. Well said.
And Griffith, very much the same. I mean, that's he's that kind of guy that just you kind of know what you're going to get with
AHL depth.
Yeah. And I like having those guys in the system, right? Let's talk about Jack Campbell. Like, should we be excited about the game he had last night, or
George Campbell?
Is this yeah, or is this is this another just a preseason game? And let's not get too excited. I thought he played fantastic. In fact, there was one where the puck went back to him, and he made that save. Like he looked cat-like. I love watching him play like that. Like this is the Jack Campbell we were hoping to get. At least last night was. Are you guys excited or still? I mean, obviously it's preseason, but where are you feeling on that?
I'm excited. I think this is the Campbell we wanted last year. There's always difficulty when you come across the country to a new team and a new city and a new house and a new bed and all those things that came along with, the new pressures and getting to know new teammates. And, he changed his equipment. He had a little bit more time with some goalie coaching. And, I think that the more comfortable he got towards the end of the season and into the playoffs, it showed. I almost think he looks like a new goalie this preseason. Like I don't want to look too much into this, right? Like it is preseason, I'll give you that, but he looks bigger in his net. He looks more calm. He looks like he's got way less movement. Remember when we interviewed Joaquin Gage, Michael, and he said that the best games you ever play and the best saves you ever make hit you right in the chest because it means you're in the perfect spot. I kept thinking about that over and over in the game, as opposed to him flopping around like Campbell of last or Billy Ranford of late. Right? Like it would just look really calm and complete and efficient. So let's not forget Jack Campbell had a 952 going into the All-Star break last year or 2 years ago with Toronto. Like This is potentially what we have as a ceiling. If he takes over 20 to 25 of the first 40 some games, maybe we got a Jack Campbell with a 950 save percentage going into the All-Star break. What do you think, Lotsy?
I'd be pumped if that was the case. I think that's reaching a little high, but
Well, I said it was the ceiling. Yeah, for sure.
Ceiling for sure. Like last year was the worst statistical season of his career, by like far and away the worst that he's ever had in the NHL. And he's put in a lot of work this summer. They're working on the mental side of the game. He was training with Tristan Jarry and I want to say Thatcher Demko, somebody else, but working with Manny Legacy, contacting Dustin Schwartz as well. So he looks a lot more calm, a lot more composed in the net, and he's looking more confident too. Like that glove save he made, it was in the third period, I believe, but he just calmly went across to the net and grabbed it, gave her a little Patrick Waugh. That was awesome to see.
65 of 67. I think a 97 save percentage is pretty good last time I checked.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's not terrible.
Yeah,
it's not terrible. I mean, it's tough. I mean, every year there's a story out of camp, out of preseason that just kind of gets your heart racing. Last year it was Holloway, of course, and for me the big story this year is Campbell, right? Well, Holloway is a big story, no doubt, but to me that's the story out of preseason this year is Campbell. From a goaltending perspective, he's just been, in my mind, lights out. He's had a couple of great games, but last night I just thought he was outstanding. It was fun to watch him play, and as we know, over however many long years, we just don't get to see Oilers goalies steal a lot of games. Now, I think that's not necessarily a bad thing because you don't want your goalie stealing all the games, but you want to win some based on having the fact that you've got McDavid and Draisaitl, but once in a while you need a goalie to steal a game, and if we can get a goalie to do that, the difference it'll make in the standings for this team will be exponential. So it'd be great to see that. Let's talk about. So there's a couple things left to talk about, and we've got about 25 minutes left. So I think we could use that up just on these two. Obviously, the 12th forward is one of them. When we'll get to that, maybe we'll finish off with that. But let's talk about Dylan Holloway. Here's a guy that I think in camp, like he has had. I mean, last year he was confident. But it just seems like he's got extra confidence this year. Is he ready to make a jump up to top six? Do you think, or again, is this preseason excitement? And what do you think about the way he's played so far? Maybe we'll start with Lotzi this time.
Sure. I think the top six is set. So no matter how excited we are about Dylan Holloway, let's stop talking about him in the top six because we got six guys who are cemented, set there, end of discussion. Having said that, Dylan Holloway is looking large and in charge this preseason. He is flying out there, and the thing I've noticed is that he wants the puck on his stick. He's competing really hard in puck battles, and he's working to get the puck. And if he's open, he's calling for it. So he wants to make a difference this year, and he's got the talent to do it.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at him, to that point, it's like having Yamamoto's tenacity, but with a little bit more skill, right?
And a little more size.
Yeah, and size. Yeah, absolutely. And so if you can get that and he continues to play like that, he does a full season like that, watch out. I mean, he's a hell of a player. And I think, last year I started thinking a lot more about progressions with players like him. But I think his progression is going to be pretty good from here. Dash, your thoughts?
I would argue he is one of the bigger stories out of this. You did say with goaltending perspective, it's Campbell, but I think I've heard it said, in fact, and I would argue it as well from my perspective, that Dylan Holloway might be the most consistent, if not the best Oiler in camp. Better than 97 and 29. So that says a lot. So, it's preseason excitement, Michael. Of course it is. Give him the Ty Ratty Award if you want for forward, and we'll move on. Lotzi nailed it. That's the top six. So it is what it is. I do think there is a little bit of wiggle room in the top 6, though, and whether it's just guys up and down or, giving a guy a little bit of ice time on a hot night. But it doesn't need to be Dylan Holloway that's good enough to be playing in the top 6. All it needs to be is, Connor Brown and Fogle having a good night to get bumped up. And then you got Nuge playing on the third line with Holloway, and geez, that's not bad last time I checked. So we're just so deep in that top 9 that I would say as long as he's got any type of scoring opportunity there, then I think that's great for him. I don't know. I just like he's gonna have a lot of hearts, Oilers fans, if he keeps playing like this and stays healthy. I'll tell you that. Like he's growing on me and growing on me fast. He skates like Taylor Hall and he hits like Justin Hall, right? Like he's like this super Hall built out of parts of all the lesser Halls. It's just like so good. And Hollywood's his nickname, right? Like let's go. I just hope that everything comes true and he reaches his potential.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. What, and again, we'll talk about this 12 forward piece, but I want to sort of hit some of these other areas. We talk a lot about these guys like Holloway, like Campbell, who've, had good camps and you like what you see from them. Who that's still remaining in preseason do we need to see more out of? Dash.
Maybe from a statistics side, Connor Brown. And, like the only reason I'm saying that is I've seen him play live now and I ISO cammed on him. He's fast. Like I was shocked to see him fly around the ice the way he did. So when I first saw him debut against Vancouver in that game, I thought, oh my God, he's going to score 10 points here in the next 3 games the way he's so. Maybe we could see a little bit more there, but I'm not sure that it matters at this point in time or we need to see more out of anybody. My honest to God answer is probably Stuart Skinner.
Yeah. Okay. Lotsy?
Yeah, Skinner's a really good one, but the top 6 haven't exactly been lighting it up, but I'm not concerned about those guys at all.
No.
Either. I think the one forward that has gotten some regular shifts in the preseason and that I expect to get some regular shifts in the regular season that hasn't done a whole lot yet is Matthias Janmark. He's been playing with the guys like Holloway a lot and like he's looked fast, but he just isn't really doing much of anything. Like I say, it's not crucial. Like I'm not really super concerned, but he's a guy I've expected a little bit more from.
Yeah. For me, I'm not even thinking forwards and I'm not thinking Skinner at all. In fact, that one game, so many penalties that you can't really fault Skinner for that. It's hard to really go and say, the goaltender's at fault for that. But I'm looking at defense, right? Like I'd love to see more out of Broberg, of course. Desharnais is another guy that I thought would look, a little bit more solid, especially in camp, given where he was last year. I expected Desharnais to be like when I put my depth chart together to be a shoe-in, for being on the third line D pair, but he's not. And watching Gleason play, like I've loved him. Playing, so far in the preseason for the Oilers, and we haven't obviously had a chance to see Ekholm and really see Kulak. Hopefully we get Ekholm back in time. I don't know if there's any updates on that. I haven't heard anything. I know him and McLeod were out today, but I really, really, really would like to see more from those guys on the D side that are looking to make a spot for opening day lineup. And I think, if there's any, if Ekholm's not there for opening day, right? Like these guys got something to play for. Like if anybody's got anything to play for, it's these guys. If Kulak's not there for opening day, right? Like I just figured they'd be playing. Instead, the guy that I noticed the most is Gleason, who was a guy we weren't talking about before camp, right? Like, maybe I'm a little bit disappointed. Broberg had, a nice pass there to Holloway, but your camp's not made on one nice pass, right? So I'm just a little bit surprised by that.
I think that's totally fair on Broberg and Darnay. On Broberg, like he had a really slow start to camp, like bad giveaways, wasn't moving his feet, like looked awful. But I think he started to pick it up the last couple games, made a couple nice rushes, started to activate in the offensive zone. That's what I've seen out of Broberg is he's starting to do some things in the offensive zone that I'm like, okay, wow, this is the Broberg I was expecting. Like showing off his edge work, walking the blue line, and making that nice little shot fake while skating backwards and then skating into the corner and setting up Bourgault with a perfect little backhand sauce pass. It's like it's like that Broberg's starting to show a little more confidence with. But yeah, we still need to see a little more out of him on the defensive end.
Yeah, absolutely. Dash? Still with us? He can't hear us. So I guess that's
Well, I'll go on Darnay too. Like Darnay was doing a lot of work with on puck skills in the summertime, and the thing I've noticed about him is, yeah, he's making quicker passes with the puck, but they're almost a little too quick. Like there's not a lot of method to his madness, I'm finding, and it's not quite working. Like I think give him a little more time with it in game situations, give him a little more time to gain his composure and his poise, and I think he'll start getting it, but not quite there yet.
But that's the thing, though, especially for a guy like Desharnais, who's got a little bit of age and maturity, or should anyway, right? Like you remember we talked about this with Ethan Bear back a few years ago when he finally came to camp ready. That's when he became a full timer with the Oilers, right? Like when he decided over the off season that he was going to come into camp and be 100% ready. That's why these guys spent an extra. Everybody was there for the captain skates, so they could be there and 100% ready. And to your point, Lottie, I look at Desharnais and I love the guy. Like I want to see him succeed. There's just a lot of good things about him when he's playing well. That I think are valuable for a third line pairing D guy. But he's made a couple of just sort of lazy passes behind the net in our zone that turned into giveaways. Just some things that it just doesn't feel like he's ready. And all of that to say, I'm a little bit surprised that none of these guys have really taken the bull by the horns, so to speak, and said, like, there's a chance come opening day that I've got a really good chance to play on the lineup because maybe Ekholm's not there. I mean, well, they would know if he's going to play or not. I assume the players would know, but now Kulak, right? Kulak didn't skate, I think.
Yeah,
right?
He didn't skate today. Like it sounds like it's just a maintenance thing with Kulak, and everything I'm hearing about Ekholm and McLeod is like if it was the playoffs or the regular season, they're playing. It's like I don't think they're serious injuries, and I would be very surprised if they're not in the lineup opening night.
Yeah. Dash, can you hear us now? You're in. All right, good.
We're good.
Good. What you said recently was brilliant, by the way.
Best 2 minutes I've ever had.
All right, we got 10 minutes left, guys. Let's talk about the one thing that's probably everybody's question mark for the Oilers is the 12th forward. Since our last show, which was 2 weeks ago, Sutter, of course, has been released on the PTO, announced his retirement, and sorry, I shouldn't laugh. Sutter had a great career as far as careers go. Did really well. I'm just certain folks out there thought that he was going to make the team the same day that he got released, and then I also the other one, of course, is Sam Gagner, who hasn't been able to play throughout the preseason. And then we've got, of course, the two that are, I think, legitimately vying for it, and Lane Peterson and Lavoie. What do you guys think? Maybe start with you, Dash, now that you're back.
I think the 12th forward's name is going to be blank space on the Pine bench. 11-7, and that's the way it's going to be.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. Yeah. Lotsy?
Yeah, it's absolutely fair. But I put a post up about this on the weekend. If you guys missed it, 2 players nose ahead at Oilers Camp on heavyhockey.com. But I've been tracking these guys' stats throughout the preseason because I'm a big nerd. And what I'm seeing is Lane Peterson, surprisingly, is leading the way in the hit count. So they're all at 4 games played right now. He's got 8 hits. Lavoie's got 5, and Adam Ernie, who is noted for his physical presence, only has 4. So that's not good enough out of him. But the way I'm seeing it, Lane Peterson, yeah, he's the guy with the best fancy stats. Like his expected goals for percentage at 59.97 is head over heels above everybody else. What I'm seeing for Lavoie is his shot counts at 11 through 4 games, and he's out shooting Peterson by, I believe, through Lavoie's last game, it was 8-4 at even strength shots for Lavoie. So he's doing a better job of generating chances and shots in the offensive zone at 5-on-5 than Lane Peterson is. And Lavoie had played 19 minutes less ice time than what Peterson had, and he's still out shooting him by twice the amount at even strength. So I think there's a strong argument to be made for Lavoie, since how the role is predominantly going to be 5-on-5. Peterson's been getting a lot more power play time, and I don't think that's going to be for a second unit power play, because that's Ryan McLeod's role. So that might be for a job in Bakersfield running that power play. That's how I'm feeling.
Yeah. Lavoie got some time playing with the 2 big dogs, and he got ran through the power play a couple times too. But honestly, that's what you want a player to do when you give him that type of opportunity, is to get the shots on net in the limited time that he had it. So well said there, Lotsy. If I'm going to give anybody the edge, I'd like to just give it to Lavoie because I want him to get it. Does that make sense? Like, I mean, he just makes the most sense for a 4th line. He's got the size, he's got the punch, he's got the physicality, he's got the grit. I don't know. I'd rather take 10 Lavoie hits in a back-to-back than Lane Peterson hits.
I think it depends on where the Oilers.
I'm looking over my shoulder, going, "Oh, here comes Lane Peterson."
No,
I think though what really comes into my question is where the Oilers see Lavoie in terms of the future of the Oilers, right? Is he, does he move up the depth chart? And if he does, I think we see Peterson stay in, right? If they see a future for Lavoie. By the way, that one rocket of a shot he put into the top corner, that was nice. Yeah,
dirty,
right? Yeah, and I kind of think we'll see Lavoie spend a year in the AHL, and Peterson, who I just don't think is a guy that they maybe see the same future from, right? And
it wasn't Peterson they gave the opportunity to with McDavid and Draisaitl. You know what I mean? Like, I think they wanted to see what Lavoie could do. They found out that was a hell of a snipe, and he got shots on net. He played physical. I don't know. I just like that guy.
They have a second round pick in a few years.
That's kind of why I'm thinking that way.
Yeah, they have a second round pick and a few years of development into Lavoie already, right? So I think they're doing their due diligence by seeing what they have and have given them an extended look in the preseason here. And so a kid out of the Kings organization, Fagamo, I believe is his name, but he just got claimed by the Predators. He had 23 goals in the AHL last year. Lavoie had 25. Right? So there's a very strong chance that somebody else out there is looking to claim a guy like Lavoie. But I think that the chances of him being claimed on waivers would go down if he was to play some NHL games and struggle. Right? If they cut him now, teams are looking at his potential and licking their chops. But if he gets into 7, 8, 9 games and struggles, they're going to be less likely to waive him. So I think that's a really strong case for why you keep Lavoie at the start of the year.
Yeah, good
Never
point.
thought about it that way. Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, because he's either good enough and he stays and sticks, or he's not good enough and then nobody's claiming him anyways. The counterpoint might be to that, Lotsy, is that everybody's sending guys down right now. Like everybody's sending down their extras, and you'd probably rather keep your own maybe that you put your time
It's
and
lost
effort
in the
into than
mix a
somebody
little bit.
else's grabbing somebody else's maybe. But that said, there's a huge trend in the NHL. I actually wanted to talk to Hart about this, but there's a lot of teams that have 40, 41, 42, 43 contracts out of 50. And, it gives you a lot of space and flexibility to be able to go and take a long shot at somebody like that if you want to stash them in the minors anyways. So yeah, great point, but I see it from both sides.
All right, guys. Well, we're just about at the end of our time, so we'll just do a little quick around the horn. I mean, this now with the new segments and that, it just seems like an hour seemed like a long time before. Now an hour and a half doesn't seem long enough. But it's all good. Lotsy, it's great to have you. I can't believe, as they said, it's the first time we've had you since we started on the Friends of Edmonton Sports Talk.
Yeah, like I said, you guys have had some big guests.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you're one of our best too. We always love having you. The Oracle of heavy hockey, as we like to call him.
We bumped Mark Spector for you. You're
That's right.
You're a big deal.
Wow, I'm honored.
So lots of different things, folks. We're going to be working a lot harder on the Heavy Hockey Showdown, which is coming up in near the end of February, just after the day after the Battle of Alberta game. Next week is the day before the season starts, and so we're going to work on a season preview show for Oilers Live Tuesday, Heavy Hockey at Night. And then tomorrow night, of course, we got the guys from Fantasy Hockey Hacks on at 9 p.m. Mountain here again on edmontonsportstalk.com or at youtube.ca/heavyhockey. Thanks to everybody for tuning in tonight, and make sure, as we always say, hit that subscribe button when you go to YouTube. Helps us out. Lotsy, any quick last words for everybody before we pass it off to Dash to take us home?
I just want to thank everybody for tuning in, and just look out for more written content on heavyhockey.com. I've been pumping them out like crazy for the last little while here, and we'll probably likely do so for the rest of training camp, and let's be real, throughout the regular season too. So it's always lots of great stuff to see on heavyhockey.com, and I'm looking forward to the preview show next week. It'll be fun.
Awesome. All right, Dash, you got 90 seconds left before we unceremoniously get kicked off the air. You're up.
Hey, thanks to Hart for coming on and breaking things down into layman's terms for us, and thanks to Hart for choosing to not be accountant full time. Thanks to Lotsy for taking 20 minutes out of his writing schedule. I'm shocked you have that type of spare time in your writing schedule. The amount that you pump content onto that website. We love you, buddy. I'm probably down to 60 seconds, so let's do it this way. Michael Hebert comes from Cree descent. He's wearing a hat that says we're Indigenous proud. We're an Indigenous-owned company here at Heavy Hockey. We just passed National Truth and Reconciliation Day. In our way to celebrate it, I had something else in mind, but we're a little bit out of time on there. So stick around on YouTube if you want to hear a story. But, we just want to honor those. And good night, everybody.
Join Devin, Bruce, and the rest of the Fantasy Hockey Hacks right here on Edmonton Sports Talk, Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Mountain, or tune in at youtube.ca/heavyhockey, and make sure you like and subscribe. Looking for a hockey fix? We've got editorials, fantasy hockey, monthly brackets, and more. Go to heavyhockey.com. Hey, it's Oilers Live Tuesdays, a regular 9 p.m. Mountain Time, now streamed live on edmontonsportstalk.com, or tune in at youtube.ca/heavyhockey. Still live on YouTube, but off the air on edmontonsportstalk.com. Dash, I kept us going on YouTube. You said you had a couple more things you wanted to say. We'll let you say that before we sign out for the night.
So I just wanted to kind of piggyback on what Stauffer was talking about yesterday's show. He had Brian Trottier on, and it was absolutely like phenomenal to hear some of the way he's come up, and even getting help from another Indigenous player in Tiger Williams in junior, and him stating that he may not even have made the NHL if it wasn't for Tiger's help. But there was a poll, I believe, and ultimately I think he was the second favorite Saskatchewan hockey player of all time, and it's not bad when you're second to Gordie Howe in that voting. He is the most decorated Indigenous hockey player of all time, and it's not even close. 2 first-team All-Stars, 2 second-team All-Stars. He won a King Clancy. He won an Art Ross. He's won a Hart Trophy. He's won the Calder Trophy. He's won 6 Stanley Cups. A Conn Smythe Trophy. He won a championship in the SJHL when he was there, and the year he played in the WHL, he was the Player of the Year. How's this for a career? Just like, honest Christ, how is this to start an NHL career? Your first year, you win the Calder Trophy, and you score 95 points, most points by a rookie that year. In your second year, you're a Hart Trophy finalist. You finish the NHL with 77 assists, the most in the NHL. You're a first-team All-Star, play in the All-Star game. In your third season, you win the Hart Trophy. You also win the Art Ross Trophy. You have the most assists in the NHL again with 87, and the best plus minus with, I'm not joking, plus 76. The very next year, what does he do? Well, he goes out and wins his first Stanley Cup, leads the playoffs in points, wins the Conn Smythe Trophy. Then his next year, he wins another Stanley Cup. Then his next year, he wins another Stanley Cup. Then his next year, he wins another Stanley Cup. Then his next year, he's a Hart Trophy finalist and a Selke finalist. Has a couple of struggles years, comes back, wins the King Clancy Award, and then just goes Stanley Cup, mic drop. Are you kidding me? What a career. Then he just goes into the Hall of Fame. So I just thought that was a cool way to kind of talk about somebody from that, type of background. And the story he talked about was pretty phenomenal, because I'd heard rumors of this, but I never actually heard it confirmed. And so there's the famous Wayne Gretzky or the Oilers story where in 1983, they walked by the winning dressing room and saw all the ice bags and the quiet and realized how much they had to really push in order to win, because boy, they just had nothing else. And I thought I'd maybe read in a book at one time or heard somewhere along the lines that was a bit of a false story, and that the Islanders were actually partying. Yesterday on Stauffer, Trottier absolutely 1000% confirmed it. He said they were partying their asses off in that dressing room, and they had somebody around the corner scouting. And every time 1 or 2 of the Oilers were about to walk by, because you had to walk by their dressing room to get out of the arena, they were like, "Hey, shh. There's some Oilers coming. There's some Oilers coming." And out of respect, because they didn't want to stir the pot or be disrespectful, they quieted down. I'm sure they wouldn't have chose that path if they'd have known that it motivated the Oilers so much to take the Stanley Cup for the next 5 years from them. But I just thought that was a really cool story. So I just wanted to add and end with all of that while we were still on YouTube. And a second good night, everybody.